Hello everyone, welcome to a new episode of Refined Theorycrafting. Well, here we are at last. I did 5 characters, well technically 6, because two characters shares the same weapon, for obvious reasons, when I get to talk about them. All of those were chosen by people on stream. If you want to see me do some refine of characters you actually want to work with, or rather, want me to work with, you could just ask whenever I'm streaming. If you want to know when I'm streaming, that's typically on my Discord, so Discord in the description below if you care. Anyway, so first off is gonna be Kana. Now, before I get about the refine, I do want to point out 2 things. Yes, the refine can be strong, but Draconic Rage is stronger when it comes down to offense. And Kana, both of them, have worse stats than Gordin. The Adrift Gordin has 31-37, for example, for the female one, and the male one is 35-35. This Kana is 31-33, so already there, he's kind of at a deficit. So, obviously the refine might sound busted, but it's really not. Either way, let's talk about the refine itself. So what I did is I took Draconic Air and make it the renewal aspect, but that was not really enough, in my opinion. So what I decided to do is actually give renewal, but also a second effect that's based on defense. Now, you may think that me going with basically Res Victory, I guess it's called, as refine condition, based on speed, is kind of a lot, considering you can actually hit pretty good amounts of speed. But before we get to this, I do want you to realize one thing. I took the clause at start of combat. Now, if you've been there on the last episode, you already know what at start of combat means. It means that any outside of, well, in combat buffs are negated. Attack speed bond, the speed is not taken in consideration. Brazen attack speed, not taken in consideration. Nothing buffing speed, also like drive speed, doesn't work. All of those skills that gives you speed into battle won't count. The only thing that will actually count is stuff like Fury, Life and Death, Speed +3, a Speed Refine. Well, Speed Refine is kind of redundant, but you get the point. Even his base effect doesn't work with it. I did this on purpose. Because, if I'm being honest, if it was just a very easy 5 attack, 5 speed, 6 def, 6 res, this would be too good. So what I did was deciding it to be based on speed, because both of the Kana's speed is kind of shaky at best, let's be honest. And it also makes, well, female Kana a bit better, because she can have a boon in speed. Which makes sense because she's a 5-star exclusive, while male Kana is a GHB unit. So, at the end of the day, even if you have, say, Fury for male Kana, and then Speed +3, which means you lose on close defense, so you can combo that with Air's Dragonstone, which is kind of foolish, to some extent. You have 40 speed, and it only works against 37 or less speed unless you're buffed. So, yeah, if you're buffed by, like, Rally Attack Speed Plus, and on top of this you have this weapon, and then you have Fury, you're looking at, well, with the merge update, and the first merge, you're looking at 44 speed to 41 speed unless you actually get the stats in. It's not perfect, but it's good. And at the same time, it's not too broken because the limitation actually can hurt it, which is fine. It's basically as balanced as I could make it. I decided to base it on Draconic Rage, Water Breath, and Draconic Aura Draconic Air, sorry, as obvious as it is. Because Water Breath gives Def Res, which is the refine. Draconic Air gives HP, and I wanted to combine both of them together, so the defense and res is a bit higher at a condition. And I based the base effect on Draconic Rage. Now, Draconic Rage can still be considered better offensively, because Draconic Rage has cooldown -1. Cooldown -1 for dragons is actually rather unique. I believe only the Korins have access to this, which is a massive buff to damage, especially considering they have access to stuff such as breath skills. Having Aether at 4 cooldown means you can actually, with no follow-up, get hit, attack back, proc Aether every fight. You don't have to get hit twice, which is quite nice. So, yeah. And obviously there's Kana F. I changed the name's weapon to reflect the fact that, you know, it's a woman's weapon, not a man, so Eris instead. Not much else to say here. Now, let's move to Lene. I took, how can I say this? I took some liberties on this one, because as ironic as this is, before I actually worked on the weapon itself, I already had an idea for the weapon. I actually did not know that Lene cannot get Barrier Blade whatsoever. And the only way to get Safeguard is through Inheritance, which you should be getting anyway. So, yeah, that's kind of strange. But one thing to note is Lele is Lene's replacement. And since the replacement doesn't come with Safeguard through Inheritance, that's why she's the one that's able to get Barrier Blade. Kinda strange that they are even locked to replacement unit, which requires you to not actually, you know, breed parents together to get a child. That actually really surprised me when I did this, but I figured at the end of the day, both of those weapons are attained through dancing in a village, so how about just combining both of them? So that's what I did. It's basically a slightly better base Vidofnir, except Vidofnir gets a refine that gives an extra 4 attack and speed, which can be also used offensively, which is good. So what I decided to make her is a defensive dancer, but at the same time, I decided to take a crack at what I consider a good Miracle Refine, unlike what, you know, Seliph got. So I decided to, you know, take Seliph's Miracle Refine, and instead of making it HP based, which is the actual problem I have with Miracle as a whole, because at the end of the day, you're so tanky that typically you're going to be able to tank a fight to begin with because of Miracle, without Miracle, because of bonds, because you're gonna be, you know, combining multiple bonds. But the problem is, then, because you're too bulky, what ends up happening is that you get to the point where you're so bulky that getting under all of HP and then getting killed is common. Because Miracle won't proc because you're gonna be too bulky. So I got rid of that part because that part is actually working way too against the character that's trying to be bulky. Because then there's very few units that actually kill you. Miracle will be useful against Reinhardt, but guess what? Divine Turfing does the same thing, so who cares? It's the same kind of logic here. And Turfing don't actually get you stuck at 1 health and makes you helpless unless you have a healer. Anyway, enough of me just ranting about Seliph. The point is, since Res is the highest of the two, I tried to go for Distant Miracle, I guess would be the name of the refine. I took the Miracle icon, obviously, of FE4 for the icon. So, you know. This is just to make her a bit more bulky, because unlike Seliph, she also only has 148 to 150 BST. 150 is if you get the super boon in defense, which with this weapon you should do. And yeah, it also gives her an extra 3 health. And at the end of the day, if Miracle is a bit too gimmicky for your taste, that's understandable. You can still go for extra stats and it will do you just fine. Which is actually pretty nice. That's the problem. That's another problem Seliph has. If Attack Death Bond was the base effect, and then you could refine to Miracle instead of the other way around, I actually would not be that opposed to the fucking Refine, even though Attack Def Bond is extremely lackluster. It's still a better utility weapon, because then I can also get a Refine to say res, run double attack res bond once attack res bond becomes a seal, and there you go, I'm actually bulky in both def and res. Or I could instead go for double attack speed bond and then run null follow-up. The possibilities are really endless. At the end of the day, it's basically like getting a Ford bond. So yeah, like again, this is meant to be more of a defensive Refine for a Dancer, because obviously Lene was at base already fairly defensive, and being able to, you know, combo this into her bulk, into her weapon would be quite welcomed. Now, you might also be wondering why Miracle. Also, you might be wondering why those are the actual 4 skills she has. This is the pairing with Lene. Now, mind you, Dance and Miracle are always going to be part of her skill set, because that comes from, well, Sylvia, which, alright, this is why I went with Miracle. If you wonder why I took Lene specifically, that's something they tend to do in general when it comes down to Fire Emblem 4. They put characters that are paired together, really. For example, outside of the very first one, which was more a, look, those are the 3 most popular characters, and then Sigurd's wife, and then someone else to just fill in, which was Teltier. If you haven't realized, Ares, Lene, Ishtar, Julius. Ishtar, Julius is a pairing, more or less, because Julius gets taken over by Lupter, but that's beyond the point. Lene has a crush for Ares, and is the most likely character to actually marry Ares, because she starts already halfway max into the love system, so yeah. And more specifically recently, we got Quan Eflin. Again, that's a very obvious pairing. Then we have Lene and Sylvia. Lene is obviously really popular, so they ended up pairing him with Sylvia, which makes sense because, ironically, Lene actually gets an event if, well, Lene is her dad. And no one else. Only if Lene is her dad, she gets an extra 5 defense. So, just a bit of trivia, I guess. Moving on. So yeah, that's that. Moving on to Hawkeye. Boy, oh boy. Hawkeye. This one was actually fairly difficult to do. I had a decent idea at base, but at the same time I was very confused on how to apply it. I wanted to give him warding steady breath, as this is. I just did not have much of an idea where to go for. And also, yeah, Namada's Guardian Axe is a very long name, and actually too long. As you can see, it's a bit squished, but nothing else I could really have done there. So, Hawkeye is a bit of a strange case. He's a very bulky def res unit when it comes down to, well, FE7. He's basically the opposite to Dart. Dart is a character that has a lot of attack and speed, as well as skill, I believe, but really poor def and res. Hawkeye is a defensive berserker. As strange as this sounds, that's actually what he is. 14 def and 10 res. It is also worth noting that, well, Hawkeye has only 3 support: Ninian, Pent, and Louise. And you can't really say Pent Ninian because they don't really have enough relation together, I feel like. Louise and Ninian, nah. So Pent and Louise was the most obvious one since they work together. And at the same time, we got a BHB with Ninian and Hawkeye. As weird as this is, I feel like what they should have done is actually release E-Green, or I-Green, I'm not sure how to pronounce this properly, which is Hawkeye's daughter. Hawkeye's daughter is an archer. Wonder why I picked Archer as one of the two components, eh? Yeah, it's because of Louise. It's just because of Louise. Well, Louise and Green, since he has complete loyalty to Pent and Louise. And yeah, I also did not want to go Fierce Stance because he's too calm a character to really work with a very angry persona. So Steady and Warning Breath kind of fits more his personality. So essentially, if he has a bow or a archer next to him, he actually gets a Steady Breath effect with +4 def and res, which combos pretty well into, well, is already pretty decent def and res stat. Now, this doesn't make him absolutely better than a character like Elbindi. Elbindi has better bulk overall despite all this, but what makes Hawkeye actually pretty good with this, without obviously better than Elbindi, is, well, first off, Elbindi has better bulk as mentioned previously, but also Elbindi has Violet Stir, which is a good buffing tool. Something that, well, Hawkeye doesn't have. Hawkeye is mostly defensive, like a defense tank. The point of this refine is to combo it with something like, say, Sorcery Blade, since you'd be using a mage after all. So if you have a mage, or an archer, but if you have a mage, you can combo this into Sorcery Blade, and then, you know, go to town with something like Close Defense, Bonfire. Plenty of unit dies like this. If they have Bolt Fighter and you have QR, you actually kill most of those units. If you run Attack Death Bond, you actually kill even more units, because that combos into Sorcery Blade, which combos into Nabath's Guardian Axe. You get the point. It's a pretty good refine, very aggressive, while actually taking the whole bulk being his most important stat from FE7 into account. So, yeah. Moving on to Gordin. Yes, fucking Gordin. Now you might be wondering, what the fuck is a bowgun? And that makes sense. It only appeared into 2 games, Fire Emblem 1 and Fire Emblem 10. It did not come back in Fire Emblem 3, it did not come back in the remake of Fire Emblem 1, it did not come back in the remake of Fire Emblem 3. Yes, that is right, that is real. This was a FE1 exclusive weapon and Gordin started with one. Yeah, it's actually kind of strange, isn't it? So the bowgun has basically no effect. It's just a 20 crit high hit rate crossbow, essentially. And in Radiant Dawn, it loses its crit, but gets close counter. So, since it only appeared in just 2 games, well, I decided to just combine both effects. And besides, at the end of the day, most people that actually built a Gordin will tell you that what they run on Gordin is a slaying bow. Yes, he starts with a brave bow, but he doesn't really make good use of it. With slaying, you can actually, you know, combo it into speed and maybe run the follow-up, for example, which is pretty good. Or you could just, you know, build on his defense and actually, you know, cooldown -1 is pretty good. You can combo this again with Sorcery Blade. If you wonder why I took infantry and armored units, no, it is not because of the OVA with let them all go but Mars. No, it's not because of this. It's because his actual supports are limited to those 4 characters. Well, this is FE12, I believe. George is basically a mentor figure, that's an infantry. Brian and Norn are both archers. If you don't know who Norn is, I don't blame you. You actually have to let someone die on your team in the very first prologue, I believe. Or the prologue, you actually send someone to die. Yes, you actually have to play poorly to unlock her. She is also an infantry archer, just like Ryan, so, you know. And Drug is an armored unit, as everyone fucking know. So, infantry and armored unit only made sense. And it's loose enough that you can actually make quite a few team comp with him. At the same time, cooldown -1 allows him to run plenty of special, and you're also, like I said before, able to run Sorcery Blade. This allows you to relatively work pretty well with him. Close counter is really solid, and having +3 to all stats can be quite a joy, because if you go speed plus, he has a super boon. That's 32 speed already. If you run attack speed bond seal, you're sitting at 37 speed. Again, the whole follow-up becomes a fantastic option, and combo this with you know, Sorcery Blade. Even his low attack of 31 becomes quite threatening at that point. Hell, he can actually break Zelgus in two with quick riposte. Not something I expected to say, but here we are. So, yeah. Probably my favorite refine that I made on this batch. And yeah, that's kind of it. So let's move on to the last one, which is Frederick. Now, Frederick was a very complicated one to do. Not because he's a bad character or anything, but because he's... well, Frederick. There's really not much that is not noteworthy about this character. Except, you know, he's an Oife with a lot of stats. As Oifes typically are. That's kinda it. Yes, it's pretty pathetic. So, yeah, Pebble Smasher. What can I say? He has a thing for Pebble. We had the Tomato Tome before. Good enough. So, Pebble Smasher might look pretty intimidating at first, but you have to realize one thing. I put a tactic restriction. Now, it only affects him, so if you have multiple infantry, it is still fine. The point is, you can't use him in a full horse team. Or you can't use him with 2 more horses. I did this on purpose. Honestly, I could have actually changed the restraint to less or equal to 1. Or actually just equal to 1. Because that way, I mean, you don't really pair Frederick with horses in Awakening. You kind of just let him do his own thing, which is why I went for a solo skill. Frederick is invaluable in those games to actually start a few chapters on the highest difficulty. So it kind of makes sense for him to get a solo skill, kind of just like breaking through, you know, of the enemy in front of them, so Crom, Lissa, and Robin works after. At the same time, the tactic restriction combos really well with Robin's Tactician Tome. Yeah, that kind of just was the goal. But yeah, 8 attack, 8 death. You also have to realize one thing: Walhart. Walhart gets 4 across the board, so 6 attack, 6 death would be actually kind of atrocious and actually doesn't help him whatsoever. At the end of the day, Walhart would just break him in 2 in terms of utility. So this kind of remediates that, because it pushes him into an attack death type of unit, whereas Walhart is a more, how can I call this? A more general unit who can actually build his speed and res to be pretty decent. And you are not restraining your team comp. You can actually run Walhart in a full horse team, buff him, send him into the pack, and there you go. Whereas you can't really do that with Frederick, but at the same time, to refresh buffs, it's actually easier for Frederick because you can actually use tactics to buff him. So it's a give and take relationship. At the end, Walhart can break the 40+ speed very easily. and it combos well with his weapon. Attack speed solo, Wolfberg, you're already at 37 speed. You're unbuffed. Just, you know, let that sink in. So, and also unmerged. So, yeah, basing him on attack and defense is basically the best I could do. So I decided him to be kind of like the scout that can actually kill shit. Based on, you know, the fact that he's kind of just the guy, well, kind of just there to guide others. You know. But that's just me. Other than that, it's kind of really difficult to work on a weapon for Frederick, because I'm gonna be real with you. Doesn't have a whole lot. I took the Cypher also because his axe is slightly different than the one he has in game. It's a bit more ornate. And the one in game is just, it's a silver axe. It's just a silver axe. Unless they make it bigger, I guess. But that's kind of all there is to it. But yeah, here we are. I don't really have much else to say. So, yeah. Gonna be seeing you maybe next month for another episode of this. Considering the release of this, I'll probably have to work on the Bath banner. Oh my god. You know, it's kind of weird how I'm more hyped to work on this video than to work on a video of a new banner of actual unit getting added to this game. It's strange, ain't it? But yeah, have a nice one, y'all. I'll see you all. I'll see you all next time.